I was 32 when I realized I had become a ghost in my own marriage. It wasn't sudden. There was no big argument, no betrayal I could point to, just a slow, silent unraveling. Jeremy and I had been married for 6 years, and somewhere along the line, we stopped touching, stopped talking, stopped seeing each other. He was always working late, always tired, always somewhere else, even when he was right in front of me. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't exciting anymore. Maybe I talked too much. Maybe I'd let myself go. I bought new clothes, cooked his favourite meals, learned to love the sports he watched. Nothing changed. I would ask how his day was, and he'd grunt or nod, eyes still glued to his phone. He'd leave for work without kissing me goodbye. He'd fall asleep with his back to me. Nights felt like years. I was lonely, but too ashamed to admit it. Then Richard moved in. Jeremy's father had recently undergone minor back surgery and needed someone to help him recover. Jeremy suggested he stay with us for 2 weeks. I wasn't thrilled about the idea. Our house was already small, and I barely had emotional space for my husband, let alone his father. But I said yes because, well, what else was I supposed to do? Richard arrived on a quiet Sunday afternoon. He was nothing like Jeremy. Older, yes, nearing 60, but there was a presence about him. He was tall, lean, with silver-streaked hair and sharp blue eyes that always seemed to be observing everything at once. He greeted me with a warm smile and a firm, steady gaze. "You must be Clara," he said. "Jeremy married up." It was the first compliment I'd heard in months. At dinner, Richard asked me questions, real ones, about my work, my childhood, my favourite books. He listened with such focus that I felt embarrassed by how much I enjoyed it. He laughed at my dry humour. He noticed when I cut my hair. He said thank you when I brought him tea. And when Jeremy sat beside me with arms folded and eyes wandering, Richard looked at me like I mattered. It didn't start as attraction. It started as attention. The kind I hadn't received in so long. I didn't know what to do with it. A few days into his stay, we settled into a rhythm. I helped him with physical therapy, made sure he took his meds, and listened to his stories about his time in the Navy. He told me about his late wife, how she used to sneak him handwritten notes in his lunchbox when they were young. He said love was a discipline, not just a feeling, that it had to be chosen over and over, especially when it was hard. I looked at him and wondered when Jeremy stopped choosing me. One night, Jeremy didn't come home. No call, no message. I stayed up late trying to convince myself he was just caught up at work. At midnight, I finally gave up and sat on the porch with a blanket and a mug of chamomile. Richard joined me a few minutes later, walking slowly but steadily. "No word?" he asked. I shook my head. "He does this a lot," he added. "Lately," I said. "Yeah?" Silence stretched between us, heavy but not uncomfortable. He looked out into the dark yard, then said softly, "You deserve better." That broke something in me. I turned to him, blinking fast, but the tears came anyway. He didn't rush to comfort me. He just let me sit in it. When I finally looked up, he was already watching me. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "For what?" "For falling apart." He reached for my hand, held it, warm, steady, kind. "Sometimes," he said, "like we need to fall apart before we figure out where to begin again." I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I avoided him. Guilt gnawed at me, even though we hadn't done anything wrong. But a line had been crossed, if not physically, then emotionally. A week later, Jeremy left for a 3-day work retreat. Richard and I were alone. That evening, we ate dinner together. He told me stories, made me laugh, and when I spilled wine on my shirt, he reached over to dab it with a napkin. His fingers grazed my skin, and I felt everything all at once. "Clara," he said softly, "look at me." I did, and for the first time someone saw me. Really saw me. Not as a wife or a hostess or a woman trying too hard, but as a person with aching eyes and a tired heart. He kissed me. It was gentle, careful, like he was giving me time to change my mind. I didn't. The kiss ended too soon, and when he pulled back, I expected shame, but what I felt instead was peace. Sad, complicated peace. That night, we didn't sleep together, not in the way you'd think. He held me on the couch as we talked for hours. About love, about disappointment, about choices. He said he never expected to feel anything for me, that he admired my patience, my kindness, my strength, that watching me dim for Jeremy made him furious. I cried until I couldn't anymore. The next day, Jeremy returned. He didn't notice anything had changed, didn't ask about me, didn't touch me. Richard left the following morning, said he was going to finish his recovery at his own house. Before he got into the cab, he turned to me and said, "You don't have to stay in a life that's killing you." I didn't say goodbye. I couldn't. 3 weeks passed. Jeremy was as distant as ever. One night he accused me of being cold. I looked at him, this man I once loved, and said, "You stopped seeing me a long time ago." He didn't understand. He didn't ask questions. The next morning, I packed a bag. I didn't go to Richard. I went to a hotel. I needed space to think, to feel, to breathe. A few days later, I called him. "I don't know what this is," I told him, "but I want to figure it out." His silence lasted just long enough to make my heart ache. Then he said, "So do I." We didn't start a fairy tale. We started a conversation, a journey, a messy, complicated, beautiful beginning. Falling in love with my husband's father wasn't something I ever imagined. It wasn't clean, it wasn't easy, but it was real. And for the first time in years, so was I.